The United States Secretary of State is in the Middle East as Palestinians and Israelis start cleanup from the latest round of conflict.
It's like a long struggle, years of and decades of resistance.
As religious leaders here at home pray for peace.
Because as Jews, and I believe as Muslims, we need to start looking at each other more as brothers and sisters and less as enemies.
Tonight, the world's watching as peace seems to be holding in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. International groups are now bringing humanitarian aid into Gaza after the most recent round of a complex war with decades of history and tragedy on both sides. From now until 6, we're going to dig into the conflict between Israel and Hamas and explain what we can by talking with experts who have deep connections to that part of the world. Experts like Davidson College professor Jonathan Berkey. He's a published historian who has won the top book prize from the Middle East Studies Association. He also used to live in Egypt and has traveled the Middle East extensively. He says this conflict boils down to the fact that Israel and Palestine both want the same piece of land in the Middle East.
At the core of all of these conflicts is a fundamental existential dilemma, and that is that you have two people who wish to create or have created for themselves national homes on the same space of land, and that at the moment that you have 7 million Palestinian Arabs who, most of whom either were driven out or are the descendants of people who were driven out of their homes and displaced from their homeland, and they want to return.
Berkey says both Jews and Arabs have historical ties to the land, and there's been talks about creating a Jewish state in the area since the 1800s. But the movement gained steam after World War II. United States President Harry Truman led the push for the United Nations to divide the area up and give Jewish people a homeland. Israel was to be a place of peace after 6 million Jewish people were killed in the Holocaust.
Well, what the Holocaust did, of course, was to give legs to the movement. Because of the suffering of the Jewish people in Europe, really highlighted the fact that anti-Semitism was deeply rooted in Western culture, and that it could have such violent and catastrophic manifestations.
Since then, he says Palestinians were moved from their homes into the Gaza Strip area and the West Bank through multiple conflicts as the Jewish population grew to almost 7 million.
This core of the conflict, that there is a group of people, 7 million Palestinian Arabs, who want to return to homes from which they were expelled in 1948, and again, some of them in 1967. The competition between two people for the same space of land is just not going to go away. From an optimistic perspective, at least that awareness of that problem is one step towards addressing it.
The historian says you also need to know more about Hamas. The U.S. State Department says Hamas is a group of militants that are in control of the Gaza Strip right now. Hamas's goal is to destroy Israel. The United States government considers Hamas a terrorist organization, and the leader of Hamas condemned the United States when our military killed Osama bin Laden, the man behind the September 11th attacks. Our Secretary of State says we've got to help rebuild Gaza without restocking Hamas.
We can continue to work with trusted, independent parties that can help do the reconstruction and the development, not some quasi-governmental authority. And the fact of the matter is, Hamas has brought nothing but ruin to the Palestinian people. It's gross mismanagement of Gaza while it's been in charge, and of course, these indiscriminate rocket attacks on Israeli civilians, which have elicited the response that they did, because Israel has a right to defend itself. So I think what's the real challenge here is to help the Palestinians, and particularly to help moderate Palestinians and the Palestinian Authority deliver better results for their people. And of course, Israel has a profound role to play in that too.
During the latest conflict, Israel says Hamas fired more than 4,000 rockets at Israeli towns and cities. But most of the projectiles were shot down by Israel's air defense system. It's called the Iron Dome. Israel started developing the tool in 2005, and then President Barack Obama asked Congress to kick in funding. A Senate report says by 2015, the United States contributed more than $1 billion to the program. Today, the Iron Dome is 90% effective and is credited with saving hundreds of thousands of civilian lives. But still, some Hamas rockets made it through, killing 12 Israelis earlier this month. Israel's retaliation was to hit the Gaza Strip, where they have no defense. The Israeli government claims it did unprecedented damage to Hamas, killing more than 200 militants while doing its best to avoid civilians, which Hamas often used as human shields for military staging areas. CBS News' Holly Williams shows us one example of this.
This gives you a sense of the force of the Israeli airstrikes. This multi-story building has been knocked off its foundations. Now, we understand that there were Hamas administrative offices in this building, along with apartments being used by civilians.
Officials in Gaza say in the end, nearly 70 of those killed were children. And Palestinian protesters argue that Israel's response was disproportionate.
We're angry. We've been fighting for 73 years. We've been told that we don't exist and that, our people are not important. Governments have been complicit for so long, and it's enough.
Folks on the ground in Gaza say more than 15,000 homes were destroyed. Israel says some of that happened when more than 700 Hamas rocket attacks on Israel backfired, blowing up parts of Palestinian neighborhoods. Palestinian officials put reconstruction costs in Gaza at tens of millions of dollars. A former Israeli intelligence officer also stressed the importance of rebuilding Gaza now. He says Hamas militants are war criminals, but he told CBS News Israel's policies have strengthened Hamas, and he says more needs to be done to improve the quality of life in Gaza. Tonight, much of the area is without clean running water and electricity.
What would have happened if I would live in Gaza? At least I would go to the border and throw stones, maybe become a terrorist, because nobody gives me any hope. Nobody gives me any future.
And just down the road from the Triad in Atlanta, thousands of demonstrators gathered outside the Israeli consulate, demanding the United States rethink weapons aid for Israel going forward.
I'm just feeling really, really angry because it's been it's our land, it's our culture. They're trying to wipe it all out.
It's unfair to the residents of Gaza who are prisoners in a space not much bigger than Georgia.
Then days later, supporters of Israel also showed up to rally for their side. The head of the diplomatic outpost responded in part by saying both groups need to work together.
To be clear, the Palestinian people are not our enemy. Our enemy is Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and radical terrorists targeting Israel's civilians. The extremists who are orchestrating and carrying out terror attacks against Israel while oppressing their own people, they should be your enemies as well, because all they stand for is death and destruction, and against any possibility of peace and reconciliation. The only way forward for the benefit of both our peoples, Israelis and Palestinians, will be through direct negotiations aimed at a peace agreement. This is what you should be demonstrating for.
And that's exactly what demonstrators did in the Middle East this past weekend. Thousands of Jews and Arabs came together in Tel Aviv to march for peace and coexistence. So the big question now, what needs to happen to prevent future conflict? We asked the rabbis at Temple Emmanuel of Greensboro. We'll leave you now with their answers and hope for a more peaceful future.
This is more than just some sort of theoretical issue or me as a rabbi saying, well, my family is over there, and that's some sort of symbolic connection between Jewish people. No, this is my actual family. This is Rabbi Gutman's actual family. My wife is over there visiting her parents. Her mother was born in Jerusalem, prior to Israel's declaration of independence, and her family has lived there for their entire lives. She's back home visiting for the first time since before COVID. Tuesday night, she spent the evening in a bomb shelter, staying with some cousins in the greater Tel Aviv area, a civilian area. And at 1:30 in the morning, the sirens went off. They knew they had 90 seconds to get from this multi-level apartment into a bomb shelter.
Here's the main thing. This is not a religious war.
Right.
Okay? This is not a war against, and quite frankly, Israel and the Palestinians both of them need to do better in learning how to live with each other. Israel is not blameless. The Palestinians are not blameless. Each one of them can talk about their own particular narrative, but that doesn't get us to coexistence. We would like for the violence to stop. However, let's understand something. Hamas has been ruling Gaza since 2007. Gaza it was returned to the Palestinians who lived there in 2005. Hamas took over in a brutal coup in 2007. And since that time has fired numerous rockets onto the state of Israel. With Hamas's absolute rejection of the state of Israel and its professed desire to destroy Israel, there isn't a dialogue, there isn't movement towards peace.
The saving grace in the Middle East is not going to come from one side trying to defeat the other, right? Triumphalism and trying to defeat is going to get just more and more conflict.
What should be happening in the Middle East right now between Israel and Palestinians is that we should be competing on soccer fields, okay? We should be developing that part of the world economically. We should be making sure that every child, Jewish, Muslim, Christian that lives there has a wonderful education. And we should be making sure that that area becomes an example of peaceful coexistence. If there's anything that the two of us as rabbis want to communicate to people, it is our prayers for peace for Israel, for Palestine, for Gaza, for the entire Middle East.